But so Germans have been made to believe, and this is like a theme that goes on in Germany, where they tell Germans that the idea that they descend from the old Germanic tribes is a fantasy and a fairy tale. Well, what? Well, what happened to them then? Were they all just beamed up? Did Scotty appear in the Enterprise and just beam them all up? If modern Germans have nothing to do with the old Germanic tribes, where did they come from? I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. Where did the other people go and where did the new people come from? Well, I think that it's the same thing that they've done to Americans, telling Americans that we're all mixed when we have not been mixed is trying to drive us towards that reality. It is a little occult in a way. It's a cult and it's psychological, because if you get people thinking and believing something, then I think on a metaphysical level, but also just on a psychological level, they're more likely to make it happen because they think that it already is. And so what you have is, since the middle of the last century, you have had this purposeful demographic replacement of ethnic Germans. But how can you make this occur without raising too many alarm bells? Well, you tell the Germans already that they don't exist, and you make them believe that they don't exist. So then they won't interfere with their own replacement. And that's what's happening. So anyway, I was given a website. I was recommended by a friend, and it's just another one of these ones that you can use with your own DNA that you've gotten from one of these DNA websites. And so these DNA websites, the reason I like them is because they debunk all of this. Now they do try to twist it, because remember the map I showed you. They will try to say, oh, well, you're all mixed, when really you're not. You're just, you're a mixture of close cousins, closely related people who are more alike to one another than they are to anyone else on the planet. So this kind of rhetoric, I had seen this firsthand in a family that had always been raised to know who they are, where they came from, and value their identity. And then someone in the family was trying to justify undermining their ethnic integrity through intermixing with someone from a vastly different background. And when they got the test and they saw, oh, Scotland, Ireland, England, Germany, maybe a little bit more towards Eastern Europe or Central Bohemia. And then 23andMe loves to put in trace amounts that aren't really justifiable. And someone that I know had seen a trace amount. We're talking a fraction of a percent, 0.1%, which is what 23andMe told them of North African. Oh, there we go. We're all mixed. Well, if let me tell you something. If 23andMe gives you 0.1, 0.2, that's not real. That's not real. That is noise on the read. And they had given me 0.2, like East Asian, which made no sense. So I did more than one test. I did 3 tests, plus a 4th website, which let me upload the data from 23andMe for their interpretation of the raw data. None of the other ones gave me anything apart from European. So the other websites all gave me 100% European, whereas 23andMe just tried to give me 99.8. But this is what I'm saying, how if you know how to read the tests, they're proving this race mixing theory wrong. But these people who don't understand how this works and who are ignorant to it, they're just seeing what they want to see. So 0.1% of trace amounts of North African was being used to justify Northern European and Sub-Saharan African intermingling, which North African is Caucasoid. It is anthropologically, racially distinct from Sub-Saharan African anyway, so it didn't even make sense. But this is the kind of like illogical argumentation that you're seeing in the mainstream. So anyway, when somebody told me that there was a new website that claims to be able to take your data and run it against databases. The website is myTrueAncestry.com. They say that what they're doing is they're running your raw data against ancient DNA samples. So what they're saying is that they have created their own database where samples had been retrieved from archaeological digs, example, a tooth from human remains, and the data is scanned in a complex process aligning the data with the human genome. Samples which are of high quality can then be processed as ancient DNA samples. Here we go. They're just explaining how they do all this. Raw samples are available to the public on online academic databases in raw format. Many ancient samples are of poor quality, but using advanced techniques, it is possible to pull valuable information which can be used for comparisons. How can myTrueAncestry determine my ancient origins? By combining the latest archaeogenetic techniques with powerful admixture algorithms and cloud computing, myTrueAncestry can accurately compare anyone with a wide variety of ancient DNA samples. Via data triangulation and clustering, one can be categorized and compared with ancestors separated by thousands of years. So, anyway, you can look at this if you want to. And I read there was like an about section. I don't see it now, but basically they had, whoops, I don't know if this is going to show my login. Let me get back in. All right. I had read about how this thing was formed. And basically they said that someone who had background in this kind of thing was dissatisfied with what can be seen in the DNA analysis. Now, I have to remind people that what DNA ancestry analysis does is it compares your data to a database. That's why I've seen people say things that actually aren't true because they don't understand how it works. I've seen people talking about like, well, it's not real because different websites will give you different results. Well, no, they don't really give you different results. It's not an exact science because it is a comparison of what's in your genetics to a database and then an interpretation of that. So it really just depends on what's in the database that they're comparing you to. So it's I mean, it's not an exact science, but what I do is I recommend, if you want to do this kind of thing, that you do more than one, and then you do whatever you can find to get more information from it. There are different services online and resources. Some of them, some of them are free, some of them are not free. This one is, there's a free version, but I upgraded because these things are like crack to me. and if you do the free version, it gives you a little snippet and then it does not store your data. It clears it out in 2 days. So you've got to take screenshots and save it. But I upgraded because I just got too excited. So this doesn't necessarily, well, what it is that it's comparing your raw data to whatever they have on file from ancient DNA. So it's not definitive proof. It's just how close does your data match what they have on file. And remember, what they have on file is not complete. It's just, oh, we found a bone from this grave. We found a bone from that grave. I don't know how many bones or teeth or whatever they have for every single group. So it's not necessarily proof for sure, and it's also not representative of the full genetic background of the entire ancient tribe. It's just whatever they have found and that was good enough quality that they could extract information from it and catalog it. So it's matching you against what's in the catalog, which is not comprehensive, but it's something. So I know you're all just dying to know what my ancient tribes are. All of these sites that I find do tend to confirm like what I pretty much already knew. I don't know if maybe I can try to make this bigger. I was a little surprised at the Scythian thing, but they put Scythian side by side with the Ostrogoths. You know what's interesting is that I have more English than in my blood than anything else, but the English, you know, are part of this wider Teutonic landscape. But I also do have ancestors exactly where the Ostrogoths would have been, and also the Ostrogoths, they did settle in areas where the Scythians once lived. So it is possible that there's some sort of overlap here. And I do have Central European influence in my heritage too, from the Sudetenland or Bomerdeutsch area in what is now Slovakia. There used to be Germanic people living there. And so that area, and you know, to the east, there would have been some Scythian, sort of ancient Scythians who had now merged into the Germanic tribes and the Slavs. So any Scythians that would have been in Central Eastern Europe sort of were absorbed into the Slavs and the Ostrogoths. So from that makes some sense. So they're basically saying that Scythian and Ostrogoth. Now for this right here, genetic distance measures how close you are to a given sample. 10. Now the smaller the number, the closer you match their file or their database. So 10 means they're darn sure. If you have 10 or less, they are darn sure that you come from this lineage. 20 means maybe it's not a direct, strong lineage, or it's in your ancestral line, but it's not like predominantly overwhelming. 30, possible relation, but not strong. So if they're saying 10 means this is your ancestry, but the smaller the number, the stronger the relationship. Well, I got a whopping 2.284. So they're saying there's very strong evidence for me with this Scythian plus Ostrogoth. Also Viking plus Scythian. Then Ostrogoth again with 8.9. Again Scythian, again Viking. So what I'm getting from that is what I pretty much knew, that I am predominantly Germanic, but I do have some of this Central European, possible Slavic influence, but the ancestry that I know of is from the area where Germanic people had been settling for hundreds of years before they came to America. But because of this landscape, you would definitely have had Germanic and Slavic overlap. I also have an ancestor from Lithuania, which shares some influence or interaction with the Slavs from that area as well. But they're very Nordic sort of phenotype people in the Baltic. They're very fair. They're right across from Finland and adjacent to Denmark. So they're very northern people. So for me, I don't have any sort of a conflict in my identity of who I am. I consider myself strongly Northern European, with a sort of Central European influence, you know. And this is proven here. So if they're telling me a measure of 2.7, 2.2, that means between Scythian Ostrogoth and Viking Scythian, it's exactly what I thought. Very Germanic, Northern European, and there is this Central European experience is there. I had uploaded my 23andMe results. I had uploaded my living DNA results. And they gave me the same thing. With the living DNA raw data, they moved it out a little bit, 3.5, 4.1. but still very strong. And it's still Scythian, Ostrogoth, Viking, Scythian, Ostrogoth, Scythian, Viking. Same thing. I did my Ancestry.com results. What did they give me? Lo and behold, same exact result. So it is pretty solid that who I am and where I came from. And another cool thing about this website, so these are the populations, and they tell you the population and the two strongest ones for if you do it for free. Now, if you're a very mixed person, this number is going to be a lot higher. Me being not a very mixed person, this number is exceedingly low. And I don't know if there's very many people who get a result like that low. But if you're 10 or under, you're apparently your heritage is very strongly tied to these people. Now, another thing this website did, so they compare your DNA to ancient samples. And maybe I can make this bigger for you. This was kind of fun to look at. And again, I'm not exactly sure what you see on the free one. I did upgrade. I couldn't help it because these things, I live for these things. So they go through, and again, smaller numbers means closer match to you. Not in the percentage point. A high percentage means a high match. But here, this is where the lower number, and they had already explained that 10 or below means very strong relationship. So they give, these are, now it does not look like these are populations, but these are individuals found and their DNA extracted from them. So a person whose physical remains identified them as a Germanic Lombard from the 6th century. I had a 7.3 relationship, so very strong relationship to that Germanic Lombard. And my match was 97% higher than the rest of the users. So I am pretty damn genetically similar to this Germanic Lombard. An individual. He's an individual. Then they give me an Alemannic Bavarian. And this also goes to show when we're talking about these related tribal groups, essentially they are the same people, because the Bavarian from a century before that, a century and a half before that, I have virtually the same degree of relationship to him, the Bavarian, as I did to the Lombard. They're both Germanic people. They're just migrating Germanic people. This Western Pomeranian, and Pomerania is a region of Germany, but from all the way from 2000 BC, my match 8.4. Again, if it's 10 or under, you come from these people. So I come unequivocally from the same people that this person found in Pomerania, who dates to 2000 BC, whose DNA was able to be preserved. I match them 98% higher than other users, and I strongly come from the same stock. Now, if I do all the way here in America as an American purebred of Northern European ancestry, well, I'm sure that there are some Germans out there in Germany who have ties every bit as strong as mine, and mine are pretty damn strong. You know, I think even a lot of Europeans have trouble beating my genetic lineage, I'll tell you that much. But I'm sure there are some out there that do beat it. But my match is 98% higher than the other users in their database. So I have a very strong genetic link to this person found in Pomerania from 2000 BC. So we're talking 4,000 years ago, people. 4,000 years ago. And they try to tell Germans today, so-called ethnic Germans, I'm telling you something, those people who lived on that soil 4,000 years ago, their blood did not just evaporate into the ether. It was transmitted through the generations. And I am a daughter of that lineage. And so are you, if you come from that racial stock. So again, it just shows the Hallstatt region. I match it more than 99% of users in their database. That's pretty fucking strong. Now, these are all Germanic regions, the Lombards, Bavaria, Pomerania. That would have been in the pre-Germanic era, but it's still that region. Hallstatt, again with the Ostrogoth, Grutungi, which is another tribe. So someone who they identified as a Grutungi / Ostrogoth from 400 AD, direct relationship. And I match them more than 98% of other users. So, I mean, they show here, and again, that's why the Scythian thing was a little weird. It was a little weird, but it kind of makes sense when you're looking at the movement of the Germanic peoples and where my family comes from. But all of this time, now I even had family members who really tried to push the Celtic thing. And I kept saying, I don't think we're very Celtic. Now that was on my more English side of the family where there is a Scottish line. So maybe she was channeling that a little bit more, where I have an other German influence from the other side of the family. But I've always very strongly channeled the Anglo-Saxons as well. And remember, the Anglo-Saxons would have been very much related because these people all originally migrated from Scandinavia. So the Anglo-Saxons would have had a strong relationship with these people. But look at my closest matches. They're strictly all from the Germanic landscape. Back to the Ostrogoths again. Then we've got the Bellbeaker people. Here is a Celt. Now remember, these aren't wide populations. These are individuals. So they're saying, comparing me to this individual, I do have a relationship. But it's not as strong. I match this person 80% more than other users. That's still strong, but it's not as strong as my 98 match to the Ostrogoths. Bellbeaker, Scotland, 66%, more than half. A relationship of 10 points is still a good, strong relationship, but you know where my heart lies. And then moving down here, they have again the Black Sea. But remember, the Ostrogoths settled there. So again, that makes sense that the remaining Scythians would have been absorbed by the incoming Ostrogoths. Viking Sweden, strong relationship, stronger than 97% of all other users. Back to the Scythians, back to the Bellbeakers in England. And again, here's that Bohemia that I've talked about. I knew that I had a Bohemian tie, but then we're back to the Germanic Lombards again. So the reason I'm showing you this is because this really just confirmed my understanding of my own genealogy. When you look at the DNA tests of these other sites, what this does is it takes your DNA and compares them to these populations. And so when we're being told that we don't have a match, or even the English, I would really urge because I've seen DNA tests from English people. And if you're not in an urban area, if you're from basically anywhere outside of London, and that's not to say white Londoners, because London has its own ancient heritage as well. And there are plenty of Southern English purebred people, but especially like Middle England, the West Midlands, the North, that's where you find these people whose DNA tests come out like overwhelmingly, profoundly British, and like almost nothing else except maybe some Scandinavian. So I would love to see British people do that and look at the backgrounds of that. But when we're being told that we're all nations of immigrants and anybody, that nobody has a direct lineage to these people, it's wrong. And the DNA evidence proves it wrong. It also disproves this idea that Americans are just mixed and don't have any identity. We do have an identity. So here we go. This is what I just said. Here we have a lass from Yorkshire who also matches the Lombard and the Alemannic samples because we were one big Germanic Teutonic family. The picture that I used for this, let me see if I can find it real quick because it goes along with what I was just saying. Because what I'm saying right now is not just this fantasy in my head. It's something that was understood in time. And so this picture, I don't have the date for it, but it does appear to be, I don't know, the latter part of maybe the 19th century or the early 20th century, maybe. Well, I put this I overlaid on it, Greater Teutonia, Eternal. But here we have the USA and Canada with Greater Germany, which included Switzerland and Austria, with Scandinavia and even parts of Finland, the Baltic even. That's why I don't have, I literally don't have any thought that my Baltic influence is problematic in any way, shape, or form. I mean, they do speak a language that's not Germanic, and they do have their own genetic differences from Germans, but they're very closely related people. I mean, look where they're positioned. Their culture is very similar with Scandinavia, Northern Germany, and their phenotype. They do have some unique elements, like certain face of their shape and eyes that kind of stand apart. But you see that similarities with the Northeast Germans too, and the Finns and everything. But they're a very Nordic people. So the fact that, that I don't feel like a mixed person at all, because every bit of my heritage, here's me over here in Northwest USA, and my ancestors came from here, from here, from here. And before they came from here to here, many of these people came to here. So this was all one big related family. And then there were German settlements over in Central Europe too, where I have ancestry from. So I don't feel divided in my identity at all. I don't feel like a mutt. And I think when they're telling us that, there's an agenda behind it. Unless you have ancestry from all over the place, you shouldn't feel like a mutt either. But you get the general point. Here's America. Here's Britain and Ireland. Here's Scandinavia. Here's Germany. Here's the Baltic. My identity comes directly from these areas. And when this was made, there was an understanding that the United States and Canada were part of this family. So that is why all of us right now, when you think about the countries where they are attacking full force and using like these racialized slurs against anyone who speaks about their heritage, point blank, it is the countries on this screen, and it is the people who come from these countries settling in the New World who are getting this, because what you see right here is what they cannot have. Us and maybe the Japanese and a few other distinct ethnic groups are some of the last unmixed people in the developed world. And so, they're working big time to eradicate this so that they can go ahead with if you don't have an identity and you don't know who you are easily hived into an ideologically based identity, and then you are herded. This did catch my eye. Christianity killed the beautiful European diversity.